Ready to go? As the traditional customary greeting, Shana Tova to everyone. Happy New Year. Or Gemar Chatima Tova. Jews have all kinds of different creative greetings. But in simple vernacular, simple English, I want to begin by wishing everyone here a very blessed and meaningful year. We have a monopoly on the word meaningful, so I could use that. One filled with joy, real joy, and happiness, and good health. And as they say in Yiddish, there's a word nachas, a pleasure from our families and children, grandchildren, for those that are that age. There's no one here, I think, that age here, right? And it should be a world of a year of personal harmony and inner peace, as well as outer and external peace and harmony. In Yom Kippur prayers, there's a section where we actually recite all the blessings for the year and through the whole ABC, the Hebrew alphabet from A to Z, or Aleph through Taf, at the end of the Musaf prayer, or close to the end, where we talk about the high priest. So I just want to say briefly that all the blessings from A to Z should bless everyone here. Both, I speak in general terms, but specifically everybody has their own particular challenges and issues, and so may God bless you in finding and filling the needs and beyond the needs that each of us have, whether it's in areas of parnasa, which is livelihood, or as I mentioned, health, or the other basic needs and beyond the basic needs. Since last week was Rosh Hashanah, we didn't have a class, but I had one 2 weeks ago on type of pre-Rosh Hashanah workshop. So in that spirit, being that the holiest day of the year is about to arrive, Friday night, Yom Kippur. So I think appropriately, since we talk so much about this holy, awesome day, and on the other hand, the contrast is that very few people necessarily experience holiness and awesomeness, especially one that lasts. So it seems fitting to try to talk about how a day like this can actually have a deep impact on our lives. As you know, those of you that have been here or have watched this class online or familiar with my approach, to me the only emphasis really that really matters above all is personal relevance. High holidays, yes, synagogues are full. People are looking for inspiration once a year. Some are trying to make a deal with God, or whatever it is that we do, or out of guilt, or responsibility, or family pressure, or whatever it is. But to make it relevant and indispensable experience, Rosh Hashanah and of course Yom Kippur, is a whole other story. Very few people could say that the expectations are met, or we even have such expectations that we actually can be transformed on this day. When I say transformed, I don't just mean for the moment, an inspirational experience, but something that's lasting forever. And if it doesn't have that type of impact, then one wonders, why is it such a special day? And I can tell you from my own personal experience how many people have been alienated and turned off by religious experiences that didn't deliver, so to speak. So it's one thing if you do it by rote or mechanically or, as I said, out of guilt, but if you really think about it as a thinking person or a feeling person, we have experiences in life that are meaningful and some experiences that are not. And it's a tragedy if Yom Kippur, which is, as I said, billed as the holiest day of the year, and a day that goes back into antiquity from the beginning of time, and on the other hand, you can't find very many that will say that this was transformative for them, so what's missing? So the easy thing, the easy answer is that there's nothing there in the first place. The whole thing, as some of our contemporary and modern atheists will tell us, the whole thing was a bluff in the first place. When Nietzsche wrote that God is dead, so those familiar with his context, he actually wasn't saying that God is dead. He was saying the God that I grew up with and that we were taught is dead. In a way, he was never alive in the first place. It just took a few thousand years to discover that. So if you take the skeptical approach, which is that religion perhaps is like Marx put it, the opiate for the masses. It's a tool, it's a crutch that people need, or as Voltaire said, that God, if what's his expression? He says that if there was no God, we'd have to create one, etc., etc. If you take that type of attitude, then obviously then there's no real deep expectations of a holiday like Yom Kippur, because it's really more of a social, psychological type of maneuver, and not necessarily have true objective depth. On the other hand, if you think about it a little further, the question is, then how has it lasted for so long? It's hard to say that people, especially Jews, are known to be pretty intelligent people. That the intelligence didn't begin in this 21st century. So how did they embrace something that had no real meaning? So it's more likely to conclude. I'm not trying to make a case one with the other. You can choose any way you like. I'm just presenting the options. It's more likely to conclude that maybe there's something that was lost. That maybe there was something in it that people knew, some secret that Yom Kippur, or for that matter, all of Jewish tradition contained, that we have lost. So all we're left is with with a hollow container that's lacking the soul. You know, that joke they tell about this. There was this wealthy man in a town who had this custom that he would invite people for meals, holiday meals, other meals, and then the custom was that at the end of the meal, besides being fed well, he would offer everyone to take anything they like from the table that would belong to them, whether it was a piece of silver or a becher. How do you say a becher? A kiddush cup, or whatever it is that they saw. Everyone was able to take something with them. He was very generous. Anyway, there was one pauper who was at the table, and he never saw such lavish surroundings and meals and full course meals and the whole works. And he's plotting how, in his wisdom, how he's going to really ask for something that no one has ever asked for. So he's looking like, what's the secret of this wealthy man's wealth? Instead of asking for one object, he might as well try to find out. He'll ask for the thing that maybe makes this man wealthy, and that way, it's not just one item, he'll become wealthy himself. So he notices throughout the meal that every time the host wanted a waiter or wanted someone to serve him, he had this little bell that he would ring. So at the end of the meal, as good to custom, everybody was asked what they would like, so everyone asked for their thing. And this chacham, as they say, this wise guy, said, you know what I want? I want the bell that you have. In his mind, he thought, what does he need all these things? All he do is have the bell. He'll come home, and he just has to ring the bell. Everything he'll get everything. So it's exactly the wealthy person, the host says to him, it's a strange request, but that's what you want. It's yours. Fine. I'll find another bell. And this pauper goes away thinking he really made a killing here. The wealthy man will lose all his wealth now. He doesn't have his bell, and he'll become the new rich guy in town. And of course, he comes home. His bear sparse home, and he tells his wife, order everything. She says, with what? I don't have no money. So he says, ring this bell, and you'll get it. Anyway, the moral of the story is quite obvious. Probably from Chelam, stories like this, we're of course all too smart to think this way. None of us would ask for the bell. But if you really think about it, psychologically speaking, we all have our bells that we ask for. We think that's what we need. Well, not necessarily what you need. There are many times you travel through your entire life looking for answers, and what you really need is someone to tell you what the question is, because your question may not be the right one. So you're looking for answers to the wrong question. And to know what the question is, to know what to ask for, to know and appreciate really what you need, not what you think you need, or what for the moment will you think will satisfy you, is itself a wisdom. So with this attitude, obviously then, look at Yom Kippur as really a hidden secret, the best kept secret. Here is the holiest day in the calendar. It still has a grip on the Jewish consciousness. In the city, you can actually palpably tell that it's Yom Kippur. And many other places. And people who do not go to any synagogue or do not have any type of religious affiliation on Yom Kippur will attempt or try something. So there's some type of power it has, but what it is, and whether any synagogue delivers, as I said, that's not necessarily the case. It's one of the reasons, actually, some of you may be familiar with my book, 60 Days, this book. We've been sending out a daily email that comes from this book. This book I wrote a few years ago with precisely this need in mind, because I had met a woman at a service, a Yom Kippur service I did in Santa Monica several years ago with my good friend, student, colleague, Peter Himmelman, the musician. So we did in Santa Monica in a theater on Wilshire Boulevard. We did a Yom Kippur service. It was really for the unaffiliated, and a large crowd came. Unexpected, actually, over 1,000 people. And it was done, I did very hands-on, very explanatory, completely non-traditional in the sense, very personal to really make it relevant. And we had a discussion. It was a whole experience. Anyway, one of the women that was in the audience was in during the service, stayed in touch with me. And then the following year, she had written to me from Santa Monica that she is looking for some synagogue. She's coming to New York. At the time, I wasn't running service here in New York, so I suggested to go to a certain shul, which I thought would be at least service to some extent. And she had a nice, I mean, it wasn't a very bad experience, but it wasn't extraordinary either. The following year, which is like 2 years after I had met her, she called me and said that, to be honest, Yom Kippur I find to be, I'm connecting to the day. It seems to be an extraordinary day. However, being that there's no real synagogue that I can really find a powerful experience, what do you think about this? She considered herself a Zen Buddhist, and I will stay home, and I want to read certain Buddhist meditations. This will be my Yom Kippur experience. And she wasn't saying it in any malicious way or being cynical. She was very sincere. And I remember when she was telling this to me on the phone, it struck me. It actually disturbed me greatly, to be honest. And not because I have a problem with Buddhist meditations, but I said to myself, here's a Jewish woman inspired to do something Yom Kippur, and there's no synagogue and there's no service in the world that can serve her. How many others are like this? Now, it wasn't a shock to me, but it was like a personal challenge. And I said to myself, we live in America. The customer is always right in this country. Competition is fierce. In Israel, just for the record, the customer is always wrong. If you go with that attitude, you'll be able to deal with a lot of the etiquette there. Just remember, the customer is always wrong in Israel. How that works, I don't know exactly, but that's how it is. And I said to myself, this is a real challenge. There's a competition. She is inspired by these Buddhist meditations, and if I or any other individual cannot come up with something that is competitive and better, then the best man deserves to win, so to speak. So I took it as a personal challenge to me, and I told her, I said, look, how about this? I will study with you some of the Yom Kippur prayers, the original Hebrew prayers, but I'll try to explain them in a way that touch your soul. And if it works, great, you use that. And if it doesn't, you can always revert to plan B. So she accepted that, and I had to dig deep, and deeper than I ever did. And I began to, on the phone, we had every once a week during the few months before the high holidays. I went over with her different prayers, and I had to research it and all that. And suffice it to say, I beat the Buddhist meditations, okay? Well, it wasn't really me. It was the prayers. I didn't force it, but I knew you had to dig deeper. And she had unbelievable experience. And today she's a completely different person, not just Yom Kippur, all year round. And as a result, that was one of the main motivations that I decided to write this book, 60 Days, which is like a 60-day workbook that I created in a type of original way of trying to decipher and demystify, and above all, personalize in a deep way the prayer service, the power of Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. And it's called 60 Days because in truth it's not just Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. It's a period in time that begins in the Hebrew month of Elul, like almost 35 days ago, and concludes at the end of Simchas Torah, at the end of the month of Tishrei that we're in now. And right now we're smack right in the middle of the high holiday season, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's called the 10 days of chuva. And when I prepared and I researched and I did work in this book, I discovered, though I grew up with this tradition my entire life, And I went to synagogue all my life, but I discovered unbelievable things. And I thanks to her that I had to dig deeper. So I realized, and which is why I share with you, that there's enormous potential and power in days like Yom Kippur. But obviously, like it is with anything, you're going to, let's say, you have an appointment, an interview, a job interview. And you know there's like a big potential job coming your way. So you're not just going to enter to that interview, prepare for an hour, or just walk in and improvise. You're going to do your homework. And you're going to make sure that you come in and make an impression and show that you know what you're talking about, and so on. The same logic has to be applied if you're going to any type of intense and powerful experience like Yom Kippur. You can't expect that just entering the day without any preparation or homework, you're suddenly going to have some epiphany. If that happens, great. May God be merciful, and God's grace is upon you. It may happen. But if you want to really appreciate it in the best possible way, we have to make our effort. So I think being here right now together and trying to share some ideas is a great preparatory so-called approach to enter a day like that. And then the more prepared you are, trust me, the more you'll benefit from it. So above all, the biggest question, of course, is what is Yom Kippur? You know, okay, it's a holy day. We know there's a Kol Nidre service. Everybody knows that. You know, the other services, some people also know some of the laws, fasting, prayers. I mean, everyone has their level of knowledge. Even if you were to read all the books on Yom Kippur and all the halachas, all the laws, that still would not necessarily tell you what is the spirit and the soul of the day. Because sometimes you can get so caught up in the details, and someone asks, so what exactly happened? Why are we doing this on Yom Kippur? Trust me, that 98% of the world, Jews who go to synagogue, can't answer that question. Most will say, it says in the Torah, it's the holiest day of the year, God said so, so that's what we do. That's what most people will say. Some will also tell you some details. Some will say it's the end of the 10 days of chuva, the beginning of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, actually, more people know what Rosh Hashanah is than Yom Kippur. Because Rosh Hashanah, most people know, is the beginning, according to Jewish tradition, creation of the universe, or the birth of human race, to be more precise. But what happened in Yom Kippur? Someone born? It's not the bris of the human race, because that would be the 8th day after Rosh Hashanah, not the 10th. You know? So what is exactly Yom Kippur? And if you open up the book of Leviticus where we read about it, it just says, one day in the year will be the most sacred day, Shabbos Shabbosim, like the Shabbos of all Shabboses, a sacred day where you can atone and ask for forgiveness. So that we know, Day of Atonement, I mean these type of, but what is Yom Kippur? It's interesting, the holiest day of the year. Hanukkah people know, Purim, Passover, we left Egypt, almost every other day. But what does Yom Kippur commemorate? Is it completely, God just happened to choose the 10th day of the month of Tishrei, 10 days after Rosh Hashanah, and said, okay, great. You know that one about one of these called intellectuals who is very dismissive of the yeshiva students, of that they only know Torah, but they have no knowledge of the secular culture. So to prove his point, he came once to a yeshiva class, a cheder, where you have these yeshiva students sitting around, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and he asked them, the first question he asked was, what happened in 1799? So one kid raised his hand, 1799, oh, it was the printing of the Tanya, you know? Some Jewish event. He starts laughing. That's all you know. You know, it's like so what happened in 1799? 1799 is the birthday of the great Russian poet and thinker. I forget his name too. I also went to yeshiva. What yeshiva did you go to? Now, it'll come to me in a moment. Not Tolstoy and not Dostoevsky, no. What? No. I can't believe that's... I missed the punchline. Huh? Yeah, it's all right? I shouldn't sweat. Someone like that. Not Proust. No, it's important for the joke. That's why I'm telling it to you. Okay, it's one of those. I forgot the punchline. Fine. I know the punchline, I just don't know the name. Let me just tell you what it was, what happened next. So then he said, the next question. Pushkin, right, Pushkin. Right, Pushkin. So then he said, okay, what happened in 1812? So one of the kids raises his hand, Pushkin's bar mitzvah. See, he caught on quick. Okay. So this is the yeshiva boy's knowledge of Western culture. So the point is, so what happened in Yom Kippur? Well, take exactly what happened. And it's not so specific in the Bible, in the verses that talk about Yom Kippur. What happened was the greatest event in history took place. And people don't know what happened. The greatest event in history is that it was the birthday. The birth, not of a person, but of a concept. And that concept is called hope. The birth of hope. Now, we all know the word hope. But you think, where's the root of hope? Like, why do we have hope? When things break, or our pasts may have been damaged, or we may have been hurt, or may have been hurt by others, or hurt, loss. Everything in this world, the arrow goes one way. There are things that are irreversible. So who came up with this idea called hope? Why should we have hope? And the answer is Moses, that came down on the Mount Sinai, from Mount Sinai, on Yom Kippur, with his gift called hope. Think what we would be like had we did not have hope in our lives. It's interesting. Sometimes things we take so much for granted. If you had no hope, you know what that means? That's total fatalism. Some people, even though there's a concept of hope, also don't have hope. It's another story. But there is the idea of hope. That means that everything is redeemable. And there's no such thing as a lost cause or a lost case. Everything is redeemable. So what's the story? The story is that 120 days before Yom Kippur was a day called Shavuos, the day when Moses went up on the Mount Sinai and received the 10 Commandments and spent 40 days and 40 nights, as the Bible says, studying with God. And we celebrate that as Shavuos. 40 days later, he returns down, comes back down from the mountain, and the Jews, in their own folly, but it was more than just folly, built a golden calf. 39 days earlier, they had heard, do not build false gods. And they built a golden calf, betraying God in the most blatant way. And not out of ignorance and not out of mistakes. It was very intentional. When Moses sees that, he breaks the tablets. That's the 17th of Tammuz in the Hebrew calendar. And he marches back up on the mountain and spends another 40 days begging God to forgive the people for their mistake or for their sin. And God refuses him, says they know what they were doing. This world is made of cause and effect. Every cause has an effect. And he returns again without forgiveness on the first day of Elul, which is now okay, so 80 days. So he was 40 days receiving the Torah, 40 days praying to no avail for the sin of the golden calf. And he comes down, and then he marches up a third time to spend another 40 days on the mountain. Throughout the entire month of Elul, which is the 30 days preceding the high holidays, Moses is on the mountain on Rosh Hashanah. And finally, 40 days later, Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is exactly 120 days from the first time Moses went on the mountain. And this time, he comes down with a second set of tablets. And God says, as we will announce right the beginning of Yom Kippur, Friday night, right after Kol Nidre, we'll say 3 times, we'll say that God said to Moses, Salachti kidvarecha, I have forgiven them as you have asked me to, as you have spoken. And this is the power of Yom Kippur. That a man had chutzpah to challenge God, and not about a mistake humans made, a collective sin that was the worst possible sin, building a false god. And yet Moses prevailed, despite the fact that it took him 80 days. So it took him 40 days to get the law, and it took him 80 days to get forgiveness. And that's why Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. Because it's a message, not just then, but to us today, And that's what Moses knew. He knew the stakes were very high. He basically was saying to God, I'm paraphrasing, he was saying to God, if you don't give me the power of forgiveness and the power of hope, what am I supposed to tell flawed human beings? We're all mortals. You created human beings with temptations, and you tempt them all the time. They live in a world with many distractions, and it's impossible that it's inevitable they will not make a mistake. So how could you not give me the message of hope, the power to tell people that even if you make a mistake, you can correct, you can repair that which is broken? And Moses refused to take no for an answer. And God said no many times. God said, what do you want from me? I created the universe, cause and effect. You put your hand in fire, the fire burns your hand. It's not something that I can reverse. It's a nature. God said, so Moses says to God, but you're the one that created the cause and effect. And God, of course, responded, but then you asked me to disrupt the whole order of the universe. And the order of the universe, there is cause and effect. So Moses said, I don't ask you to disrupt it. I'm asking you to give us a back door that when we need to, we can break the door down and make an exception. Obviously, that doesn't give a license to people to make mistakes and sin. That's not what Moses was asking for. And the people, Moses gave it to them, and they had their punishment for those that build the golden calf. But I'm asking you that those that will make mistakes, that they should have somewhere the opportunity, some release point, some relief, that they can find a solution, even though there's a world of cause and effect. And with that was born the concept of hope, the concept of chuva, which doesn't mean repent, by the way. Chuva in Hebrew comes from the word shuv, to return, which actually is the antithesis of repentance. Repentance means you made a mistake, you leave it behind, and you move on. Chuva means return. What are you returning to? You're not returning to the sin. You're returning to, and this is a fundamental Jewish concept, that we don't believe in original sin, that the universe is an evil place controlled by the devil, and only if you believe in a certain Jew can you be redeemed. We believe that the universe is fundamentally a beautiful place that can be concealed in layers and layers and husks of darkness, but the goodness always remains intact. And when a person sins, that's the anomaly, that's the aberration. So tshuva is returning to the essence as you were before you sinned. It's a big difference between the concept of repentance and the concept of return. Yes, there's an element of repentance, obviously, of regretting a mistake you made, correcting, obviously, getting forgiveness. But it doesn't end with just denying the past or regretting the past. You need to return to a deeper place. As I said earlier, digging deeper to redeem the past. And we can always redeem it. But how do we know that? And when did we get that power? That's what happened on Yom Kippur. Now think of that when you enter Yom Kippur. That this is the birth of hope in your life. So how many of us have shattered dreams, broken promises, idealism, ideas that we once thought we would achieve, and today we've become jaded or cynical? So Yom Kippur comes to tell you there's no such thing as impossible, period. Everything's possible. And Moses proved it and gave it to us as a gift. And every year we invoke those words that God said to Moses. I have forgiven as you've asked me. You know, it's like an interesting statement. God's secure enough to say, not I forgive because you persuaded me. Yes, I will always remember it was you, the human being, the human Moses, that elicited it from me. Imagine that power. It's a whole different type of relationship with God. It's not just that God is the master and we're the subject. Here the subject, Moses, was the one that changed the master's mind. It's a partnership and a relationship, not just a one-way street. I mean, there's so many, this alone, frankly, I could stop the class right now, this alone is enough reason to celebrate Yom Kippur, because it's an answer to almost every question. Every question we have is, is there hope for me? Can I find something I haven't found till now? Some people ask the question regarding finding their soulmate. Others getting over certain losses. We all have our issues, our challenges. So Yom Kippur is a resounding yes, unequivocal yes, that God himself opened up a door. But that door itself takes effort. It doesn't just happen automatically. That's why we have a prayer service, and we have actually 5 prayer services, as I shall discuss. So, to rephrase it perhaps in even more relevant terms, even though I think this is quite relevant when you put it in that context, it erases the whole so-called religiosity and the dogmatic element of Yom Kippur. It makes it very personal. It's your hope. It's the birthday of new possibilities in your life. So before I continue, I just want to ask a little survey, if I may. How many of you are here because of what was written in the email reminding you about this class? Okay. I know when I was writing it, I was thinking, I wasn't trying to advertise it, but I felt that was a way of expressing the power of Yom Kippur. So if you read it, and I'll elaborate on it now. I began by saying there, did you ever, what would you look like if you were at your best? That's the question, okay? And think about that. And think about the last time you asked this question to yourself, if you ever did. Or if anyone ever challenged you to. One of the greatest gifts in life, which doesn't happen to most of us, is to have a mentor at the right time, at the right moment in your life. If you have the mentor, usually in the teenage years, who may just say one word to you that can change the whole course of your life. So you all know whether you do or don't, or had one like that. But what happens when a moment like that, a defining moment in a person's life, it's not so much what is understood at the moment. It's really planting a seed that sometimes takes years to bear fruit. But it's the people that believe in you and believe how great you can be are the people that can change your life. Unfortunately, just sometimes to appreciate breathing, you need to see, God forbid, what it means to struggle to breathe. Unfortunately, in our world, most of what is affirmed in our lives and on a daily basis is how weak we are and how flawed we are. There's no limit to how many people are ready to remind you of how impossible, how your potential is limited, how difficult things are. That's why you have very few people called pioneers. It's not just that we don't have a pioneering spirit and a pioneer is a unique spirit. It's also we are constantly being inundated with messages that do not celebrate your intrinsic value. Just to use a small example, advertising. And I'm not here on a fire and brimstone attack on advertising. But what is the essence of advertising? It's spending a lot of money to convince you and me that without this and this product, you cannot be complete. And they wouldn't spend the money if it wasn't successful. So think about how many advertisements you've seen. Statistics show that by the time you're age 20 in America, you have seen at least 1 million advertisements. I say seen, I include hearing, billboards, magazines, internet, TV, the works. 1 million. That means 1 million different times you were told there's something that you need to be complete. And obviously you didn't buy them all 1 million times. Just an example. Now this is not necessarily malicious, but it's part of a commercial age, a consumer age. And then when you look around and you see what other people have, it creates misery because you don't have as much as others have. I can go into a whole psychological analysis of this, but I think this is enough to make the point. What this is really reinforcing is that you're not adequate as you are. Now I'm not saying many products are very important and they are valuable and it's good that they sell themselves. But let's be honest, how many, honestly, are really necessary for life? When's the last time someone sent you a message that you are valuable as you are because God put you on this earth, you're an indispensable musical note, that the grand composer put you here, and you don't have to buy anything to be that way. That what is it, the Woody Allen stereotypical joke just reinforces all the high holiday myths about the guy who comes to the rabbi and says, okay, Rabbi, I hear that the Torah has the truth and answers all the secrets of life's mysteries. Yes, my son. I said, so would you study it with me? Of course. And how much will it cost me? It's free. The Torah was given to us free by God to Moses on Sinai. Moses taught it for free. It's always been taught for free. There's no cost. There's no charge. So they sit down, they open up a Torah, and they start reading. It's all in Hebrew. He says, it's Hebrew. I don't understand. He says, Hebrew lessons will be $10,000. You knew there was a catch, right? You're not getting the truth so fast. This, of course, it feeds into the big stereotype, as I just read Deepak Chopra saying it in the sharpest way. He says that when they asked him about religion, he says he believes that God gave the human race truth. The devil came and said, let's organize it, and they call that religion. How many of you agree with that one? You have to put yourself on the line. It's all right, fine. Won't go there right now. It's a whole other topic. But the point is, the stereotypes are there, and for good reason, because religion can become commercialized, bureaucratized, and politicized, and so on. And it's not easy always to find people of the soul and the spirit and the humility that that transcends all that stuff. So when it comes to Yom Kippur and the message of hope that I was sharing, and the resonance of its value, it comes down to tell you that you and I and everyone here has inherent value simply by the fact that you're here on this earth. And that soul inside of you remains trapped. Number one, trapped in your own physical body and material world that keeps you distracted, seduced. And number two, by a society that constantly reinforces that you're not complete unless you do something, unless you buy something, unless you go here, unless you dress like this, unless you look like that. In other words, value is based on buying power, looks, youth, equity, contact, network, connections, how many friends you have on Facebook. I'm up there. Or whatever it is. Okay. Frankly, that's not added my value. Actually, I think it's devalued me. You know, sometimes short is long, less is more. So the point I'm making here is that when we talk about the high holidays, we talk about Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, this message is vital. And beyond all the prayers, you know, here's a machzor right here. I'm holding a prayer book for the high holidays. Just the Yom Kippur one. How long would it take an average intelligent person to read this from cover to cover? Even a fast reader. A few days, maybe one day. And we're not even taking into account the density, the cryptic nature of the Hebrew in this book. So who in the world really can read this on Yom Kippur, which is a service, even if it's the whole day, and understand every word? I've never met the person. So what is going on here? So the answer is that the prayers are not an end in themselves. The bottom line is that we are going Yom Kippur to stand before God and reach that place inside of yourself that is the best you can be. And it's not an easy journey because, as I said, all year round, other images are being reinforced in our mind, not the best you can be. If I asked you, what do you think you would look like if the best you can be, you'll see it'll be hard for you to find a full answer. You'll have to think about it. You'll have to review it, and maybe come back with some type of coherent answer. But if I asked you the opposite question, tell me, what do you look like at the worst? When the worst you can be, trust me, there you're going to find a very quick answer. We all know what we look like when we're at our worst. I mean, I want to say the worst, but when we're not at our best. Because you see it a lot. You see it often. But to make it a little easier, let's not say you. If I asked you what you think about your closest friend at their worst, I'm sure you'll have what to say. At best, because we live in a world that constantly reinforces that original sin theme, that this world is not such a good place. And from time to time we see nobility and beauty and virtue. Judaism rejects that absolutely, that this world is an excellent place. And above all, you are a pure soul that has been trapped and is trapped in the marble. One of the most beautiful compliments I ever received was that woman wrote to me a few years ago before Rosh Hashanah. She said she receives my weekly email. She lives in Texas, and she went through a very terrible divorce, a very terrible year, and then moved to Seattle. And one of the lifelines, she said, I used to always wait for your email. It was like a ray of hope every week. And I want to thank you. And she wrote, she was a sculptor by profession, and she wrote to me as Michelangelo, our hero, said, when they asked him, how do you sculpt these beautiful angels? His answer was, I saw the angel trapped in the marble, and I carved and set her free. And she concludes, she says, so thank you for setting my angel free. Now, why do I find this a touching compliment? Not because of what she said about me, because the bottom line is it's not about me, it's about her. The angel is inside of you. It's not, no one can give it to you. No one can sell it to you. You don't have to buy it. It's yours forever. Whether it's trapped in marble or concrete or other substances I don't want to mention here, is another story. But it's there and it's intact. And one day in the year, you have absolute access to it. So the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what would we be like at our best? Even the question itself, you'll see, will begin to provoke ideas. They say, Shailas Chacham Chetzi Chuva. The question of a wise person is half an answer. And the question is vital. What would you look like? Try that exercise. We have a few days to Yom Kippur. Write it down. Work on it. You don't have to answer right now. You don't have to answer it to me or to anyone else. To yourself. What would you be like if you were at your best? So often one of the ways we try, if we're going to go in that direction, would be we try to go back in our memories to the best times in our lives. You know, when we were happiest. Sometimes it's when you were a child. Sometimes it's before certain experiences that broke you or hurt you. But everyone has something they can refer to. If you can't find something at all that you can refer to, well, then maybe you need help with a friend or somebody that can help you go there. But trust me, try this exercise. This alone will make your Yom Kippur forever different. Because then we're told, the Yom Kippur comes, and what Moses accessed, when we say hope, it wasn't just that God said his hope, forgiveness you can repair. He was accessing a deeper truth, a deeper reality. That's really what God opened the door. The door is that no matter what happened in your life, you can go back to a point where you were at your best, and you can retrieve it. You can access it again. In the healing world, there's a talk about the inner child. John Bradshaw and some others in the 70s pioneered the concept. I don't know who's the first that coined the word, the inner child. But in the Torah and Jewish thought, it's always been there, the concept of the inner child. There's even a blessing that you don't usually hear, but someone will say that the child in you should never grow up. That doesn't mean you should remain immature. It means that the part of you that has that adventure, that spark, that spunk, that free abandon, you see life as an adventure, everything is exciting. That should never die. That the sparkle should never die. But what happens in life is our inner child does get trapped in the realities of an adult world. And that soul within us doesn't die, but we think it died. And we don't think we can retrieve it. We can't access it again. So Yom Kippur, the answer is absolutely not true. You absolutely can access it. But it's a journey. It's a journey that takes 5 steps. And that's why there are 5 prayers on Yom Kippur. And I'm going to go through them briefly. But you'll see that they will also help us determine how you find that best part of yourself. So I'm going to help not just tell you to do the exercise, I'll also give you some guidelines of how you can actually find out what you really look like. And trust me, it's not what you think it is. Because even as much as you may come up with thinking how you'd be at your best, there's much more than meets the eye, even in your own eye. And there are elements that are necessary to be able to access it. The first, of course, is awareness, which I'm going to talk about now. The awareness of how you get aware and how you grow in that awareness. The second is confidence. And don't underestimate that. Confidence, like a coach. A coach doesn't just train someone in skills, but also in confidence. Even the most skilled geniuses, even the greatest artists, greatest athletes, all have blind spots. They all have moments where they lose confidence. You see it. You see athletes who are in the top of their game, and then something happens. They lose confidence. Confidence is necessary because it gives you the strength to believe in yourself, even when you may not see how you're going to get out of the situation. So besides awareness, we need confidence. Confidence often is hard to build in yourself, especially when you lose some of it. It's very critical to have someone, a friend, someone you can turn to that helps bolster it or reignite it. And then there are a few other elements which we'll discuss as we go here. I want to go back to the awareness part. So, just a little introduction. Prayer in Judaism is a journey. See it as a journey. It's not about saying hymns and psalms and singing and asking God what you need. That's part of it. But above all, it's a journey. It's a journey to a place that's beyond the tangible reality that we are right here. There's an expression in the Bible that says that when Jacob had the dream, Sulam Mutzav arza v'roshei magia shamayma. He dreamt of a ladder, a four-rung ladder, whose legs were firmly planted on the ground, and its head, the top of the ladder, went into heaven. And the Zohar says, sulam, a ladder, that is prayer. Prayer has four rungs. In our case, we'll be talking about 5 rungs. And it's a journey from one place to another. The Talmud says that prayer is service of the heart. It's emoting. So if studying Torah or studying is exercise for the brain, for the mind, prayer is exercise for the heart. So it's not just reading and trying to understand as you would a book or a Torah essay or a Torah concept. It's learning how to emote, how to communicate. So it's a journey, and it's an emotional journey. So in Jewish tradition, we pray 3 times a day throughout the year. The morning service, Shachris, the afternoon Mincha service, and the evening Ma'ariv service. There's the reasons for the 3. On Shabbat and holidays, we add a 4th prayer called Musaf. And once a year, on Yom Kippur, we add a 5th prayer called Ne'ilah. Right at sundown, at the end of the day, the 5th prayer is added. What's the significance of these numbers? Because it goes like this. The soul, the best in you, has 5 dimensions. Using the words of the Medrash, that has 5 names or 5 levels, 5 dimensions. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. If you have the 60 Days book, you'll find that it's spelled out in detail, some of what I'm sharing here. But briefly, 5 dimensions of the soul means one deeper and inner within the other. So if you think of it like the conscious, subconscious, 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 like that. Layers. With the first level, nefesh being the biological life. So when we say a person's alive, what does that mean? You have a soul that's keeping you alive. That can be very biological. That you're breathing, your major functions, your major organs are functioning, and systems are functioning. But that's it. You're physically alive. You're biologically, medically alive. That doesn't mean you say, I feel alive, because God forbid, and no one should know this, it could also be a vegetable in the hospital and is also alive. It could be people who are like walking dead. They're physically all right, but they have no feelings, unmotivated, depressed. So comes the second level called Ruach of the soul, which is Ruach, which means spirit, and that refers to emotional life. You don't just biologically are functioning, your brain is working, your heart is pumping and beating, but you also have an emotional life. The third dimension is Neshama, which is intellectual life, another dimension. The fourth is Chaya, which also means life. In this case, we're talking about transcendental life. So you could have biological, emotional, intellectual life, but lacking an element of transcendence in your life. And finally, the fifth is called Yechida, which means oneness, considered to be the essence of the soul. Every day of the year, we can conventionally access the lower 3 levels, the biological, emotional, and intellectual. On Shabbat and holidays, we have power to access and open one more door, the transcendent. And on Yom Kippur, once a year, Achaz B'Shana, that's the way the verse that puts it twice in the Torah, once a year, you have access and ability to access all doors, the 5th dimension as well. That 5th is the essence of who you are, called Yechida. Very few are blessed to know what that looks like, that part of yourself. One of the reasons it's difficult, and this is one of the challenges, is because the deeper you go in, the less tangible are the tools and the ability to experience it. Like if someone were to ask you to express the deepest, most intimate feelings you have, the answer, the response that, well, I don't know if that's what you would say, but the response that you should be saying is that the deepest part of myself is inexpressible. It really doesn't have expression. Think of this paradox. If you talk about superficial things like the weather or sports, you can talk about it all day. Gossip. If someone asks you, tell me something about yourself, something really that matters, you'll find very few words. And not because you don't trust. Even someone you trust, you don't find words when it comes to the deeper feelings a person has within. Which is odd, because it would seem that the closer it is to your heart, the more you should be able to talk about it. Superficial things are not relevant Why do we have that many words? The answer is because words are containers. And containers, by definition, have parameters and have limits. So when it comes to superficial ideas, superficial thoughts and feelings, words are sufficient, they're adequate to express yourself. Something deeper does not have, those words are simply cannot contain a deeper experience. So we created the language of metaphor. Poetry, music, dance, art, which allows us to express things that we can't express in quite the same way in literal words. But what about experiences that are even beyond metaphor? So sometimes a cry like, oy vey, oy, or a laugh, or a tear, can carry more volume, can contain more volumes than all the other expressions. Because the deeper you go, and this is the rule in the Kabbalistic thought, there's a formula. The more energy, the less containers. The more containers, the less energy. That's how it works. So the deeper you go, the less words and the less defined, tangible containers to express that part of yourself. So we need different type of tools. So as I said, it could be a cry, it can be a laugh, it can be other things. And then there's a point where the Zohar says, and this is we're getting now to Yechida, that's called a kola de lo yishtama. It's a sound that has no sound, a voice that has no sound. I don't want to bring a negative example, but it just captures it. When a person, God forbid, tragedy strikes, there's the initial moment of shock. The psychologists will tell you that even tears won't come out of that person, even crying, even a cry. Now, obviously, on the positive side, there's also that type of experience, except we don't, as I mentioned, experience positive as much as negative. So there's a part of you that doesn't have real expression. But don't ever think that it's not as real as the rest. As a matter of fact, precisely because it's so real, that's why it can't express itself. So then you may, of course, wonder, so how do we access it if it's inexpressible? You can access it. There are ways. Yom Kippur is one of the ways to do it. Why do you think on Yom Kippur we abstain from eating and drinking and trying to abstain from as much material activity as possible? You're trying to shut off the outer machinery in order to access a voice that is very subtle. Think of it this way. When you're in the middle of a rush hour and there's a lot of noise out there, you're not going to hear a beautiful, subtle symphony. So the Zohar tells us that each soul, you at your best, has a song. Every soul has its particular hum. Just like a mother can recognize a sound of a child, not just in the human race, but also in the animal kingdom, those that are soulful people can meet you and they will recognize your hum. Even a hum you yourself have never heard. Because every soul releases a hum, except it is what we call koil demama daka. It is the subtle, gentle voice that is not heard amidst the din and the outer commotion and turbulence of our world. So what would you be like if you were able to shut off all this extracurricular sounds? Not so easy. You know, when you leave the city and you go out to the country, you suddenly see stars. Some city dwellers say, what are stars? Well, there are stars in heaven. And the lights of the city, it's not just are so powerful you just can't see them. Or try to go to a place somewhere like in the Caucasian mountains where there's purely fresh air. It'll take you a few days to adjust and cough out all the toxins that we have within us. So we live in a world that has many layers. You ever see a newborn child breathe? You see a heaving chest up and down in this most smooth rhythm possible. And you wonder, so why don't we breathe that way? So the obvious answer is because the child's so small, so you see it. It's not true. You know, as the child grows, the lungs also grow. So why wouldn't it be proportionate? And not just because we gain a little weight, it's because as we begin to breathe toxins in, you stop using all your lungs. We use, they say, 70-80% of the lung when you breathe. That's why if you take a very deep breath in, unless you trained yourself, you usually cough. Because that part has not been used. The bottom, so-called, it's like, I know we do oil changes in our cars, but I don't know how we do toxin changes in our lungs. And I don't know exactly if it's physical, in the physical sense, but there's definitely something that affects. So the rhythm, the natural rhythm of a child, not just physically, but also psychologically, spiritually, it becomes thwarted. and compromised as we grow older. And how much more so in our emotional state of being. So comes Yom Kippur and says, here's a journey. You cannot access Ne'ilah, the fifth prayer, just automatically because you're not used to going there. It's not a place that you're accustomed to experiencing. So it's a journey that has to begin with Kol Nidre on the eve of Yom Kippur, where we begin the journey from the biological life into the emotional, into the intellectual, into the transcendent, and ultimately to the high point and pinnacle of Ne'ilah. But when you come there, and you come well prepared, you can access something you would never access without it. Here's the story, Moses up on the mountain that I was sharing. Right now, Moses is spending that last few days before he returns on Yom Kippur. So he has a Yom Kippur experience up there. One of the things Moses asks God is, show me your face, show me your glory. And the classic answer, the answer everybody knows what God answers is, no man can see my face and live. That sentence has haunted thinkers and philosophers and mystics from all of history. What does that mean? That means that we can never see the ultimate reality as long as we remain humans. That's what God is saying. But if you continue and read what happens there, Moses doesn't stop. And neither does God. God says to him, you cannot see my face and live. No man can see my face and live. I'll explain in a moment. But then God adds something. He says, you know what? However, I will show you my back. But my face you will not see. So the commentaries ask, what is going on here? Why would God rub it in? He said already that no man can see me and live. Why does God have to say again, my back I'll show you, fine. But then he adds, but my face you won't see. In other words, don't ever think you're going to see my face. He said it already. And more importantly, what is Moses thinking? Moses was not a small man. Did he not know that a human being, as long as he remains human, cannot see God? The famous expression that if I knew God, I would be God. And Moses still asked. Well, here's the answer given, one of the most beautiful answers I've ever heard. And you'll see how it relates to us. If you read the verse properly with the right punctuation, and the Torah has a punctuation, an oral tradition that tells you how to read a sentence, the comma is in the wrong place the way I read it. When I said that God said, he said, you'll see my back, comma, but my face you won't see. They say the comma is in the wrong place. The comma has to come after the word face, which is like this. You'll see my back and my face, but my face you will see by not looking. So it's not that God is adding, just emphasizing that you can't see me. God is saying there's two ways to see me. There's two ways to experience reality. One is through what we call interpolation, another through extrapolation. There's a way to experience reality by going and holding on to it, identifying it, analyzing it, grasping it. We have ideas that we can grasp. But then there's a thing called negative logic, where you can't grasp the idea directly, but you could indirectly grasp it through a process of elimination. In other words, the way we experience it is not by holding on to it, is by letting go, and then it emerges. And that's a deeper reality. The realities that emerge are always deeper than the realities we can directly access. And I'll give you an example for it. Let's talk about it in the context of psychology, the unconscious. So today talk about therapy, psychotherapy, the unconscious. Nobody has ever seen the unconscious. Not Freud and not his mother. Nobody's ever seen the unconscious. I know some people think your mother sees your unconscious. Or she is your unconscious, let's put it that way. And yet people talk about it as if it exists. And you go to, let's say, some therapists perhaps may not deserve the title, but some are good. And they can help you dig deeper and find experiences, past experiences, deeper reservoirs of energy, whether it's anger or positive energy that lies beneath the surface. But if that beneath the surface is not accessible, how do you access? And here's a simple thing. You'll see how simple it is, and it's a very fundamental way of communicating. I'll just use an example. Let's say a wall. Think of an imaginary wall that's shrouded in darkness. You cannot see it. and you can't shine any light on it, and you can't go over and touch it. Is there any way for you to figure out what that wall looks like? So, based on the criteria I just mentioned, most of us say, no way. I mean, I can't touch it. I can't shine a light on it. How am I supposed to know what it's like? So here's the answer. You're given a ball, a bouncing ball, and you can bounce the ball on the wall. And you bounce the ball, and you see how it bounces back. If it bounces back straight, you know that's a straight part of the wall. If it bounces back to the right, you know there's a ridge. If it bounces to the left, there's a ridge the other direction. And if you keep bouncing through the process called extrapolation, you can figure out what the wall looks like by never touching it and never seeing it. Because you see how it bounces back. This, by the way, is how they measure subatomic particles. Nobody can see a subatomic particle. No one can see an atom. We don't even know what an atom looks like. It's too microscopic. And no one will ever develop a tool or instrument to see it. So how do we know what's going on in subatomic particles? And we build computers based on it, and so much technology today is based on things that nobody's ever seen. The answer is we don't see it directly, we see it indirectly. We see its effects. So if you superheat it, or you speed it up, super speed it up, you suddenly see things happening. So you recognize, just like how do they know there's a black hole? Because they recognize there's a gravitational pull and nobody knows where it's coming from. You see from the other planets or the other bodies out there in outer space that something is dragging it, or something is attracting it or repelling it. So by extrapolation, you know there must be something there that's doing that. It would be like, it is like with there's smoke, there's fire. You may not see the fire, but you see the symptoms. So we see the symptoms of many things, and we don't see the roots. So with that in mind, you think of it that way, there is a whole part of our reality of who you are. You say who you are at your best, your greatest potential, you may never see in any physical way. But don't ever think it's not real. It's more real than anything, and it emerges as opposed to being acquired. There are things you acquire, and there are things that emerge. The truest things in life will always emerge. The things we acquire are usually less real. You can go buy bread, you can buy a magazine, you can buy entertainment, you can buy a lot of things, but you can't buy love. It has to emerge. You can do things and go through certain motions and be aggressive, and maybe it will come, but it doesn't. It's not acquirable. Unfortunately, many of the mistakes we make in life is we try to apply our acquisition tools to things that require emergence tools. The real things in life, deeper happiness, as I said, love, peace, and again the list goes on. Search for God. That's what God told Moses. You can see my back. You want to see me? You can see manifestations of me. You know, look at my great universe. You'll find aspects. But if you want reflections, but if you want to see the essence of me, you cannot use your eyes. It has to emerge. It's realities that emerge. The deepest truths always emerge. When something resonates, the word resonate, what does that mean? It means it's there, and it just needs something to make it resonate. Yom Kippur is the ultimate day of resonance, because when you allow that, you shut off the outer layers, a part of you will emerge that is always sitting and waiting. And it's not difficult. You know, it's difficult. The difficult is we're not used to it, and we don't let those layers. We don't free ourselves of those layers. That's the main reason why we have to go through the 5 prayers, 5 steps of prayer. You know, I grew up with a few individuals in my life that did see the soul in other people all the time. They saw the best in everyone, including in me. And I learned things from that. You know, you meet somebody, and it's very easy, which most of us usually gravitate to find the negatives. Whatever reason it is, maybe it's our own insecurity when we feel that others are not so great, so it makes you feel a little better about yourself, because then, hey, you know, I'm not that bad. There's definitely that element. You know, misery likes company. People who are insecure like to gravitate toward trying to establish that everyone else also has got their problems. Really secure people, very confident people, not only can coexist with others, but they see the beauty in others. That doesn't mean they're naive and don't see some of the ugly parts. But it's like the Baal Shem Tov says, it's a mirror. It's a mirror image. You ever notice how you get aggravated by certain behavior of other people? And if you're ever honest with yourself, you find out, why do you get more aggravated than others? You find out you do exactly the same thing they do, sometimes even worse. So instead of looking at yourself, you see it in others. Others will not see that feature. So we are complicated creatures, but the ability to look at another person and see the best that they can be, as I said, is not naivete. It's recognizing a deeper truth inside of ourselves. And I can tell you right now, if you can't do that with another, you'll never do it with yourself either. Well, you may say, well, 1 second, what's the logic there? You know, we all love ourselves. Just because I can't love somebody else, why can't I love myself? Yeah, you love yourself. Depends. What part of yourself do you love? I'm talking about loving and connecting to the purest part of yourself. If you cannot do it with another, you cannot do it with yourself, and vice versa. So if you think the consequences of this discussion are just about getting to know the best of yourself, no, it's not just that. It's also how to have relationships. Because if you can't access that place, how can you ever really expect to have a true relationship with another human being? As soon as something goes wrong, you'll right away, it'll undermine the whole relationship. The people who have enduring, loving relationships through lifetime, you know what really the secret is? The secret is the secret that Moses learned on the mountain when God said, you can't see me. You see, most of us think, and this sounds so counterintuitive, I'm having a difficulty in a relationship, let's both sit down, we'll communicate, we'll figure out what you need, what I need, tell me all your issues, I'll hear your issues. Sounds great. That sounds like, you know, what can you expect? So many people are not willing to do that. I don't want to look at, I'm not interested in your issues, you know, it's my needs. But you know something, even that statement, which sounds so forthcoming, is missing a key thing. The key thing in a relationship is the ability to not look at everything. Is to connect to a thing that transcends your needs. Like Moses came to discover, by not looking at God, he discovered God. Emergence. The people who have enduring relationships have what we call bittul. Bittul is a very profound combination of humility, modesty, suspension of self. That you are not the center of the universe. It's not all about you. Now everybody, if I've asked any of you individually, do you think it's all about you? Nobody usually admits that they think that way. There are other people that, and I've asked this question to some people, and they say, not me, but if that person, yeah, definitely. You know, the fact is, there's an expression, ani va'afsi eid, me and nothing else. All of us, and I include myself as well, have definitely moments, if not much more than moments, where you are the center of existence. Look, on a basic physical level, the fact is, you wake up in the morning, you don't feel somebody else's pain, you feel your own. You have to be told that someone else may be in pain, and then you make the choice whether you're going to have empathy or not. But with yourself, you don't need to make the choice because you know it. Everything in existence we see from the outside in except yourself. We're the only one, only you see yourself from the inside out. Everything else is from the outside in. I'm sitting here and speaking. You may respect me, you may connect, but I'm still not you. If I say something that's resonating, then we recognize that there's something that we share. So it doesn't mean that you're an evil person where when your life begins all about you. That's how we are naturally. The mystics explain that phenomenon, that due to God's concealment of the truth, that if we really saw the truth, we would all feel connected. But since it's concealed, so we feel all there is me. And then you need to work on it and try to get to a place where you find the deeper connection to others. But the bottom line is we all begin the journey from ourselves. The journey, however, as I said with the 5 steps, leads you to a place where you come to realize that fundamental blindness, it's not all about you. And when you want to find the real you, this is the ultimate paradox, it's when you let go of your own sense of self, that's when you begin to discover your true self. This is common in all mystical teachings, but Yom Kippur captures the essence of it. Think of consciousness. Think of times when you're really involved in something you love. You don't even feel that you're hungry. You don't feel anything. And as soon as you become aware of what's going on around you, you're already out of the zone. The ultimate being, the ultimate experience of truth is when you're not conscious of the experience itself. But we live in a world where we deify awareness. We deify, I'm aware of it, I'm conscious of it. You know something, when you say you're conscious from a Torah perspective, it actually says that you're not conscious. Because as soon as you're conscious of something, it means you're not in it. There's the object and the subject. For example, if I asked you if a fish can get wet, or water, can water get wet? Water is a state of wetness, it's a noun. When we get wet, it's a verb, it's a state of, it's an action. Sometimes they say, the mystics, the Kabbalists say, that women experience love like a noun, men experience love like a verb. For men it's an act, and for women it's an experience. When you experience something, it's not just a subject and an object, you're so much in it, you become one with it. When God was telling Moses, you want to see me, you want to become me, you have to stop thinking and looking for it. Let go, and it will emerge. And when it emerges, you cannot feel you can bottle it, or control it, or try to sell it. It won't work. As soon as you do that, you lose the right to be there. I don't know how many of you identify with this. If you've read some mystical ideas and teachings, or you've experienced this is common basic principles in mysticism. But we live in a world where we're not always exposed to these ideas. Yom Kippur is the ultimate suspension experience of self. But it doesn't come easy, because you're going in with a very strong orientation of living with yourself all the time and your needs and focusing on that. So the first step, Kol Nidre, what are we saying, Kol Nidre? So it's a beautiful tune. Did you ever read the words? It sounds quite odd, actually. It's all about vows. And like 50 different ways. Jews have, synonyms for everything. So in all kinds of different expressions, we keep saying that we're annulling all our vows. So if you only heard the tune and you didn't know the words, it would sound so awe-inspiring. But when you read the words, you say, vows? Like what vows exactly? What does that mean? Last time you cursed? Or, what are the vows? And why is this like the most awesome opening of Yom Kippur? To the point that Kol Nidre has become so much part of the culture. I don't know if you know this, but even in Hollywood, the first song sung in a movie that was not a silent movie, a sound movie, a soundy as they called it then. I wasn't around then, so don't think I'm that old. But is the jazz singer, where Al Jolson sings Kol Nidre. So I don't know if this is a Jewish conspiracy to make sure that once, because they do say Hollywood in its early stages was on a block in New York where there was only kosher butcher shops. But maybe this is a Jewish way of planting in that the first song ever sung is Kol Nidre. How do you like that? But the real meaning of it in the opening of Yom Kippur is basically freeing yourself. The word for Hebrew, neder, Kol Nidre. Kol Nidre means all the vows. Neder means to be bound to something. So neder really refers to every inhibition, every trap, every commitment, every responsibility that keeps you trapped. You want to free yourself of, because if you keep them in place, there's no way you can ever access Ne'ilah, the essence of your soul. How can you? Why is it so often we find you get inspired, you set out on a journey, New Year resolution, this is going to be different this time. And a few days pass, or sometimes a few hours, or a few minutes, and you're back to square one. And you start wondering to yourself, what's the matter with me? I'm not in a good place, I got to get out of here. I've done this many times, why do I keep going back to the same old situation? Maybe a new name, a new place, but the same patterns. And then you say, maybe I'm not really sincere. Something's the matter with me. The answer is no. You may be very sincere. You may be very, very motivated. But there's one problem. You set out on a journey, but you have a ball and chain tied to your legs. So all your intentions are great, but you have a past. You have baggage that's very heavy. A guy told me who went to one of these really intense breakout, like these weekends where you really do a very serious, like a boot camp. And there's play acting there, where you tell the other people in the group your family dynamic, your family pathology. Like you have a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, and you describe them a bit, and different people in the room, they play act your family structure. And the guy told me what kind of impact. He was at the point dating somebody, and it was a very weird dating process because he was in and out. It was like sometimes he cared, sometimes he didn't care, and he was really being unfair to the girl, to the woman. And something happened, so he described his situation, that he has his family, has his mother, his father, and they started play acting, and basically the person who was playing his mother climbed onto his back, physically. So imagine a 200-pound guy has a 180-pound guy on his back, and not for a moment. He just won't get off his back. And now another guy is play acting the girlfriend that he's dating, and another one's play acting his brother or his sister, and hey. Now that's the difference between emergence. I feel now something emerging. The silence now. That was blocking out a lot of. I feel very self-conscious. So they're all play acting, and he's trying to talk to this girl about these. I mean, again, it's all figure. I mean, they're actually physically doing it. It's not in real time, but it's not real people. I mean, it's real people, but it's not his real experiences. And he keeps telling the guy, "Can you get off my back?" And while he's talking to the girl, he yells at the kid, "Off my back! I'm trying to talk to this girl." And after 5-10 minutes, he realized, he told me, what was going on. It was exactly what his life was like. His mother was so haunting him, even though she wasn't physically on his back, but she so distracted him that he could not be dating. He couldn't think clearly. So sometimes we set out on our way to do something new, but the problem is we have a past that's there. Just because it's invisible doesn't mean it's not weighing you down. And that's the problem. So the challenge is not always knowing where you want to go, as they try to tell you. Know your destination, set your goals, your objectives, the end in mind. That's important. But it's even more important to know what's weighing you down, because you'll never get to that end, no matter how much you want it and how motivated you are, because you have too much in the past. So Kol Nidre, think of the brilliance of opening up the whole Yom Kippur. The first thing is you have to free yourself as much as possible. So we say Kol Nidre with our mouths. We hear the chazan, the cantor, sing it. And we ask God, obviously, to give us strength to free some of those shackles, at least for this day. So the opening of Yom Kippur, the most important thing is first it's like bringing in new furniture into your home and the whole house is full of dirt and dust. It's not what you would do. First you have to clean out the room, and then you can bring something new in, or else the new will become contaminated by the old. So Yom Kippur begins with freeing ourselves. And as I said, this doesn't mean that you have to necessarily completely physically be free, but at least if you're aware and you ask God, listen, I can't do everything myself, help me, you already have a head start. And it's all about that type of attitude. I can't go through all the steps, we don't have the time to do so, but if you go on our website, meaningfullife.com, or through 60 days, you'll find a breakdown of all the steps through the service. And it's really about a journey. It's not even about how much you say and how many lines and how many words you say in the prayers. It's about opening your heart and letting God in. And above all, getting rid of your own preconceptions and assumptions. It's about emptying yourself. And the more you empty, the more room for something to emerge. Because it's the clutter and the turbulence that I was talking about before that is our enemy. It's not that you don't have the pure angel within. It's the marble. It's the stone. It's the other forces that trap you. Don't underestimate how powerful they are. I can tell you from my own limited experience, working with people, the biggest challenge, 95% of the work is getting rid of the marble. It's not about the angel. The angel will be fine within you. The problem is everything else is trapping you. Now, can you expect that Yom Kippur will solve it all? I'm not suggesting that. It doesn't work that way. It's not a magic pill in that sense. But it definitely can be a major beginning. And recognizing that when you do come to that high point of Ne'ilah, it's not about just, are you going to do chuva and not do sins again, which is usually what they try to tell you. It's much more profound. Are you going to be true to yourself? Or are you going to be back to the same character that you've been masquerading as up till that point? And that's not so easy to be true to yourself. You need a lot of courage, and you need to really feel confident that you can access a part of yourself that you may not even be familiar with. I've seen people who've had these epiphanies, And when they have them, they usually don't come in a moment. But when they start emerging, and you ask them later, they say, no, it's a new person. I am not the person that I once was. That can happen, and I actually would say it should happen to all of us, because even if you already discovered yourself, or you think you have, there's no end to the layers of self-discovery. It's not like you've reached the destination. There's always more. And in an interesting way, relationships, the fact that relationships don't work so well, I don't know about the rest of the world, but New York definitely needs a little infusion, is very much a symptom and a direct impact because of this lack of being in touch with real self. There's no way that two people can have a true relationship if they're not true to themselves. But we live in a world where we're replacing it. It's like you can't live with her or you can't live without her. You can't live with him, you can't live without him. So we found all kinds of ways to compensate and compromise, because we want to have some companionship, and we're ready to lower the bar, severely lower it, just to have something in our lives. And I'm not here to criticize that. People do what they do, they got to do to survive. But to give up on yourself and say that's the end, that's the tragedy. What you do temporarily is what you do. But the goal here is that Yom Kippur gives us a renewed hope that you can access a part of yourself that is truly, really you. So, step one is knowing that it's there. The angel is waiting for you. Not an accident, we say Yom Kippur, we dress in white, we fast, because we're compared to angels on that day. And the second thing, besides awareness, is the courage, the confidence before courage, the confidence that you can access it. Now, of course, each of us can help each other in this regard. It's very difficult to just do it without help, to be very honest. Not just someone inspiring you, but it's difficult. We have our blind spots, and it says, Ein chavish mater satzmei, which means a person in fetters. Someone that's tied up in ropes can't untie themselves. You need a friend. You need someone else that can help you, and you in turn can help them. So in a way, you can help people better than you can help yourself sometimes, and vice versa. So that's another critical component. And then there's the courage. The courage is a major one as well, because it takes courage to always try new things. That's how it is. Even if the promise is finding the true you, it's still courage. It took a lot of courage of Moses to ask God to see the essence of things, because he didn't know what he's going to end up seeing. He didn't know what kind of impact it will have on him. And it's like they say, be careful what you pray for, what you ask for. So it's not so easy, because if you've gotten accustomed, this is a common thing, as they say, the known evil is easier than the unknown evil. People are sometimes trapped by the negative in their lives. I've met more than once people who survivors of serious abuse in their childhood. They live lives of constant pain, constant misery. And in discussing it with some people like that, they tell me they're comfortable. They've become comfortable with the pain. When they're not in pain, they're very, very disoriented. They almost expect the situation to become painful. I don't mean necessarily physical pain. I'm talking about psychological pain. And they not only expect the situations to be painful, they will do things to actually cause the pain, because that's what they think is their reality. Now, there's a voice inside of everyone that resonates that says, how's that possible? But when you've been breathing toxic fumes for long enough, that becomes your reality, and it's very difficult to adjust to fresh air. And someone say, there's fresh air out there, why don't you just go? Look how difficult it will be, because habits are very powerful. And I know I can survive here. I don't know how I'll survive fresh air. Was that scene in the Shawshank Redemption where the guy doesn't want to leave prison, and he can't handle freedom? You get so accustomed to certain traps. And it's a scene that resonates with many of us. Hopefully not in that extreme, but that you get used to things. So don't underestimate the need for courage. That's why, thank God, we had a Moses, who I would have loved to meet him in person. Maybe I did, for all I know. Such courage, because who did he turn to? Who was his mentor exactly? Like who coached him to get up there in the mountain with that type of chutzpah and tell God, I won't take no for an answer? Who did he turn to? So I don't know where he got that type of courage. I mean, that's what made him Moses, a man of God, and God chose well. I guess he chose somebody that's going to be met his match, so to speak. Because I find it amazing again and again, every time I think about it, that's the essence of it, a human being prevailing over God. And God celebrating that. I remember once someone in his class asked an interesting question, which I had to think about. He said to me, you find in the Bible, you find God gets angry, you find tears, you find pain, but you never find God laughing. There's never laughter. I mean, Jews have a sense of humor, but God doesn't seem to have a sense of humor, at least not in the Bible. And it's a good question, there's a God of compassion, there's a God of justice, there's a God of anger, there's a God of joy. Where's the humor? And as I thought about it, I remember there's a Talmudic statement, that talks about an argument in heaven. The argument is between two academies. It's called Mesivta de Rakia and Mesivta de Kutshabrichu. The Academy of God and the Academy of Heaven had a Talmudic debate. They argue up there too, just for the records. So they had a Talmudic debate in some complex law about the laws of purity, impurity. And God's Academy and God himself had one opinion, and the scholars in the other academy had a different opinion. Which is fine, that's very much part of the process. You could argue with God. And they decided, listen, since the Torah was not given in heaven, it says Torah le b'shamayim, Torah was given to earth, we have to go down to an expert on earth. So they go down, who is it? Not Pushkin. Now I'm forgetting this guy's name. Okay. Equal treatment. Now I forgot the Torah sage. Fine. Listen, you got it wrong last time. What are you trying? It's not Dostoevsky, huh? Yeshua ben. No. It's a different. It's a different debate. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Rabbi Yeshua Baba Barchana. Okay. So they came down to the sage and they asked him, "What's his opinion?" And he reviewed it, and he ruled not like God, but like the other academy, against God. So you'd think, hey, that's like a little weird, And then it says, this is where you find God laughing. The Talmud says that Kodesh Baruch Hu chayech, in Hebrew chiyuch is a laugh, it's a smile. God smiled, God laughed, and said, Natzchuni, Boni Natzchuni. My child has prevailed, my child has prevailed. He was the joy of like a father seeing his son prevailing over him. And this is where you find God laughing. So this was my response about the God's laughter. In the Bible, which is a very it's a structured book about law and order, there's really no room for laughter. In nature also doesn't laugh. Everything is a clock. The sun rises, the sun sets. There's a clockwork system, cause and effect, and so on. But when you get into the interaction between human beings and God, where we can make mistakes and we can correct, and the clockwork of the universe gets upset due to human free will, as Isaac Bashevis Singer said, we must believe in free will. We have no choice. So when you get into that dimension, where the whole script gets upset, then you can get into laughter. Because remember, what is laughter? Laughter is not, when we're naturally speaking to each other, we don't laugh. Laughter is when we see some type of irony, some twist, some unexpected something or other. So here, when a human being challenged God, it caused God to laugh, because God is secure enough to be wrong as well. That's the interesting thing. And Moses was able to prevail, and that's an amazing feat. This doesn't mean that we have a license to just challenge God and basically just justify ourselves. Remember, Moses' right was because he was selfless. It was not about himself. If it was about him winning, it would be a whole different story. He was completely selfless. It was not about his own self-interest. And that's obviously why he was able to prevail, because he was reaching a deeper truth. He was saying to God, look, I know you love them, and they love you, and I don't care what kind of betrayal, and I don't care what mistakes were made. Let's dig deeper, and we could find a deeper place. And that, in essence, is the whole story of Yom Kippur. You have that deeper place inside of you, waiting to be released, and it's up to you and what you will do to allow that to emerge. Think about it in relationships. Just today, someone's calling me how desperate they are. They want to get out of a bad marriage. And I've been advising this couple for a while. The truth is it's salvageable, but they both don't know it yet. And I hope they will find out. But it's salvageable because I see what they're made of, and I see how they care about each other. But they're both screwed up, basically. They have their own very messed up tools that came from their own childhoods, and they're their own worst enemies. So I'm trying to prevail on the guy that this message, I'm saying to him, do you think that all of you has already emerged and that you've brought the best to this relationship? So, I'm trying, and I'm getting there. The point is that the first step in any type of freedom is to recognize that you may not have a handle on yourself. Don't think you have it all worked out, and that you know yourself to the fullest. That's not a very, it's very arrogant to think that you know thyself. Because even God says that even God did not know himself. He did not know he's going to forgive. So if God could have been changed, so we all can have an attitude that something can change. But here, more importantly, it's about yourself. It's like giving up on a part of yourself. To me, that's one of the saddest things, when you see someone is able to reach the finish line and they give up a minute before, or 5 minutes before, or an hour before. The Baal Shem Tov has a beautiful analogy just to visualize it. Some of you know Yiddish. The word in Yiddish for a spiral staircase. It's an interesting expression. It's called Schwindeltrepp in Yiddish. Schwindeltrepp literally means schwindel. When you say a schwindler, if your father or mother called you a schwindler, it meant like you're a swindler, basically. It's a way of saying, sometimes it's tongue-in-cheek, but Schwindeltrepp means swindling staircase, swindling steps. Why is it schwindel? Why is it like deceptive? Because a regular staircase, you see the steps. It may be many steps, but you're getting there. When you go up a spiral staircase, you climb a spiral staircase, you don't see your destination half the time. As a matter of fact, right before you reach it, you have to make a complete 360-degree turn with your back to the destination. So the Baal Shem Tov says, he uses it actually with a verse a verse about the future, about a dance. That a dance also works that same way. Certain dances where you turn around, you don't see your partner. So he says that the idea of the journey of life is not like a straight staircase. You could be climbing, but you don't know that you're climbing, and you'll be blinded sometimes right before the destination. Because that's the way the life works. Life does not go in a straight line. It's a swindling staircase. It swindles. It deceives you into thinking that you don't even see the destination. And sometimes it just takes that confidence and faith to see it through. How many things may have happened, how many opportunities may we have missed because we just didn't see it through? Now, obviously, this can create a lot of confusion, because you can say to yourself, well, how do I know when I should continue fighting and when I shouldn't? Obvious question that needs some objective advice, because there are certain situations where you do have to recognize to go a different path. But I'm obviously focusing on the positive and the belief in ourselves. So know one thing when you enter Yom Kippur. The best is yet to come. Okay? You've not seen the real you yet. I have no doubt about that. You may have seen glimpses of it. We are trapped in a world that seduces and hypnotizes us into thinking, having a self-image and impression of ourselves that is very far from what it really is like. It's hard to speak in generic terms because each of us is in a different place. But if you're able to juxtapose the real you here and the perceived you here, meaning how you perceive yourself, and see the contrast, that would be an interesting exercise. And as I said, every one of us is different. Some of us, you'll find certain, think of it like think of a perfect circle, and then you juxtapose a jagged or imperfect, a broken circle on top of it. So the perfect circle allows you to see where it's jagged and where it's so on and so forth. Yom Kippur, in a way, is like that backdrop of a perfect you. And if you allow yourself to surrender and be absorbed by it, what you'll begin seeing is the parts that are misaligned from the real self, sense of self. Now, obviously, this is a serious life work, and it takes a lot of effort and so on. Hopefully I shared some ideas and some tools and methods that could help you get there. But again, above all, I have to say what I said at the outset. It's all about knowing absolutely that you have that part inside yourself. And as I'm speaking, I've convinced myself that I have certain parts I have to work on. I just realized. That just goes to show you. Because what happens is, it's about also getting outside of the trap of being shaped by other people's expectations, needs, and so on. One of the reasons we ask for forgiveness the day before Yom Kippur, and we forgive others both ways, there's a reason for it. It's not just you forgive and God will forgive you. The word in Hebrew for forgiveness is mechila, machal. We'll say that statement many times in the prayer service on Yom Kippur. Machal lanu. Machal also means circle in Hebrew. A circle. When someone has hurt you, the circle between you and them has been broken. When you forgive or they forgive you, the circle is complete again. This means that it's not just about whether they deserve forgiveness or whether they're perfect. Sometimes we need to forgive for ourselves. We need to move on. We need to have our circle complete again. How much energy, or as my good friend Rabbi Joseph Tlushkin says, how much free space do you give tendency in your mind for people that have made you angry or you dislike? Carrying a grudge, carrying anger, and so on is basically giving that other person free rent inside of your body, inside of your mind, inside of your heart. So forgiveness is not just about our obligation to each other. That's part of it. It's also our obligation to ourselves. Because how much energy do you invest and expend on fighting demons of people who have hurt you and getting even, and God should curse them, and why someone lost opportunities? Sometimes it can be quite depressing if you were to actually figure out how many hours a day is spent on fighting the negative. Which means for every minute you fight the negative, you don't have energy to embrace the positive. So is it a wonder why it's difficult to access the real you? It's being shaped by so many other factors and forces. Is it possible completely to let go completely? Each person according to their measure. Who knows? But Yom Kippur definitely gives us strength to do so. And get beyond those perceptions and expectations, even within marriage and even within relationships, and learn that both you and your partner have dimensions that have hitherto not been exposed, have not emerged. If you think in those terms, every relationship can grow. Every relationship can be salvaged. That's what Moses did. He didn't look at the here and now. Yes, the Jews had built a golden calf. Yes, God was angry about it, and he was justified. Moses dug deeper and said, you know what, I need a new script here. I can't just go and try to figure out how I'm going to reconcile between a betrayal like that and a God who deservedly was upset about it. I mean, not in anthropomorphic terms, however you understand it in spiritual concepts. So Moses dug deeper. You dig deeper. I remember hearing once a person who suffered greatly. He lost his wife at a young age, in his early 30s, of a heart attack. Ended up with 11 little orphans, all alone in this world. And I asked him, so how did you get through it? There's no real answer. I wasn't expecting an answer. I just wanted to hear how he would phrase it. And he said to me, I had two choices. I was either going to sink or I was going to dig deeper. And I didn't want to sink. So what happens to a person, God forbid, in such a situation, they dig deeper and they're able to access something? But bottom line is, in all these situations, they don't allow the present script to control their lives. And that's what means the birth of hope. Comes Yom Kippur, it's a clean slate. You have a script that has defined you from the beginning, from the moment you were born, a script that maybe controls you, but you don't have to be controlled. Just knowing that, you have permission to be free of your script. Just think of that when you enter Yom Kippur, and you'll see that already it will begin the journey. So I wish I could go on and on. This is like, to me, obviously the essence of what life is all about. And Yom Kippur comes once a year, and everyone is a new Yom Kippur. I just want to wish everyone here to use the day to the fullest. And don't think of it as just another day. Maybe just go into it with a no attitude. And as you enter, that's how you leave. You enter with a new attitude, you'll get something. For it to last requires work. We'll talk about that. There'll be classes after Yom Kippur. Next week we won't have a class because it's Sukkot. The following week, I think, is also the end of the holidays. But we'll send that email out to keep you informed of what's going on. But above all, I want to just say from my heart to your heart, hopefully, from my soul to yours, that to all 5 dimensions of your soul, the Yechida inside of you, that subtle, gentle voice is beating all the time. Except it's like a pilot flame. It's undercover. You don't see it. You may not see it. You may not recognize it. Others may not. But it's always there. And when you meet people who touch you in that place, you can feel some of it. Yom Kippur is a time where we all enter the Holy of Holies, like the high priest, where time, space, and the human being all meet. The purest time, Yom Kippur, the purest space, and the purest human being, which is the purest dimension of your soul, all converge. So it's an opportunity to reach new heights. And I wish you all, from my yechida to yours, from my oneness to your oneness, that you should access it even for a moment. But remember, don't try to control it, and don't try to own it. Don't try to acquire it. Let it emerge, and let it be. And the more you do that, the more it will manifest. And may that oneness spill over into the fragmentation and even divisiveness within ourselves, and within our communities, and within the world at large, because if it begins to create a unity within yourself, it has a ripple effect that impacts everything around you. Those that are at peace with themselves bring peace to those around them. So I wish all that upon you, and upon all the Jewish people, upon all the world. And as I said at the outset, a blessed year, materially and spiritually and in health. And those that need the blessings to find their soulmate, may that manifest. Like I always say, I have my dancing shoes ready. Just invite me, I'll be there. Maybe that's a way to make a keli, a container in the nature. Print up the invitations, send out, and then try to find your soulmate. Who knows? When all else fails, you try everything. You try new approaches. You can always change the date, And those blessings that need blessings in the area of children, having children, or areas of health, may God bless you with that. And of course, in our economic times, blessing for parnasa, ba'achava, as they say, abundant channels. And in this period of time, when it's the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's especially appropriate to add in the 3 pillars in extra prayer and extra study, and above all, extra charity. It says that these days are especially prone to that, because when we show compassion, give to others, God reacts midah keneged midah, which means tit for tat, measure for measure. So God bless you all for this new year, and it should be a very healthy year, a very sacred year. And please stay in touch. If anybody needs any assistance in Yom Kippur services, please, you can speak to me or Velvel, or we'll be here right now and let you know different options you may have. I know that some people who have never prayed before in Yom Kippur, so I can suggest some things that will work. And and as well, just remember that we're here for you in any way, in your journey. And if you haven't left your email address, please leave it, and we'll be able to stay in touch with you. I send out a weekly email every week, so we can send that to you. And I also want to mention that, though it's plugging my own book, but I really think, it's something I put my heart into. It's an excellent companion to this holiday season, 60 days. And Velvel just reminds me as well, I did a few CDs from previous classes that are here available as well for sale. One is called Yom Kippur Sanctity. That was a workshop I did at the Open Center. And the second is called the Kabbalah of Yom Kippur, How This Holy Day Can Change Your Life. I'm sure there's some parallels to what I discussed here, but tonight was a new subject matter. And I look forward to meet the real you. So everyone have Shana Tova. Thank you so much.